Hey guys, have you ever caught yourself scrolling for hours, chasing distractions, arguing over things that don't really matter, while time quietly slips through your fingers? Here's a truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. You are running out of time. Every tick of the clock is one less heartbeat. Every sunrise is one day closer to your final one. It sounds harsh, but Marcus Aurelius, one of the wisest emperors in history, wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." He wasn't trying to scare us. He was trying to wake us up. Because there are two types of people in the world: those who live as if life will last forever, and those who realize it won't, and live accordingly. That second group, that's where the Stoics lived. They called this mindset Memento Mori. Remember, you must die. But this isn't a philosophy about death. It's about life. It's about clarity, urgency, purpose. It's about realizing that every argument, every grudge, every wasted day costs you a piece of the only thing you truly own: your time. Seneca once wrote, "It's not that we have a short life, but that we waste much of it." He saw people chasing status, pleasure, and distraction, anything but presence. And he asked the simplest question: if death is certain, why not live deliberately? The Stoics believed Memento Mori was not meant to make you anxious. It was meant to make you alive, to remind you to say what needs to be said, to love while you still can, to stop postponing the life you were meant to live. Epictetus put it this way: "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do." Because when you accept death, you stop fearing it and start living with integrity, courage, and gratitude. So tonight, we begin there, at the edge of life itself. Because understanding Memento Mori isn't about thinking of death. It's about mastering the art of not wasting your life. And in this video, we'll explore how to do exactly that, how to turn this ancient reminder into a daily practice that clears your mind, strengthens your discipline, and helps you live fully, no matter how uncertain life becomes. 1. The awakening. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. This is a sentence that can change the temperature of your entire existence. Marcus Aurelius wrote it with the calm of a man who ruled an empire and awakening to death. Most people read that line and feel a chill. But Marcus didn't mean to frighten you. He meant to wake you. Because somewhere between birth and this exact second, you were handed a countdown clock, invisible, irreversible, already ticking. The tragedy isn't that you'll die someday. The tragedy is that you think you won't die today. That belief, the illusion of infinite time, is what quietly steals your life while you're busy waiting for it to start. Think about it. How many days have you traded for noise? How many hours have you buried beneath distraction, fear, resentment, or delay? How many times have you said tomorrow, knowing deep down that tomorrow isn't promised? Every heartbeat is a reminder, a soft knock from eternity saying, you are temporary. And yet, most of us live as if we're permanent residents of this world, as if death is some distant rumor that only applies to other people. Marcus Aurelius knew better. He faced plague, war, betrayal, and loss, and still woke up each morning repeating a single truth: I will die. My loved ones will die. The world will move on. And that's why this moment matters. That's the essence of Memento Mori. Remember that you will die, not to sink you into despair, but to pull you into presence. Because once you remember that every experience is borrowed, you begin to live like a person who's finally awake. Seneca called it the ultimate cure for carelessness. He said, "It's not that we have a short life, but that we waste much of it." He was right. Life isn't too short. We're just too distracted. We guard our money like treasure, but we spend our time like it's worthless, on grudges, gossip, and goals that don't even belong to us. And when death finally taps us on the shoulder, we whisper, "Already." But Memento Mori isn't about fear, it's about freedom. Because the moment you accept death as real, you stop being controlled by it. The moment you acknowledge impermanence, you stop postponing your purpose. Death awareness turns your days into diamonds, finite, precious, unrepeatable. To the modern mind, death sounds cruel. But Epictetus wasn't teaching detachment, he was teaching devotion. He meant love them more, appreciate them deeper. Don't wait for tragedy to remind you of gratitude, because one day, every face you love will become a memory. Every laugh you share will echo only in your mind. And that knowledge, that ache of awareness, is not meant to paralyze you, but to purify you, to strip away the trivial and leave only the true. You start to see clearly the argument wasn't worth it. The resentment isn't worth it. The endless chase for validation, never worth it. You realize the only currency you truly have is attention, and the only way to honor life is to spend that attention wisely, here, now, fully. So, imagine this. If tonight were your last night on Earth, what would you do differently? Would you still scroll mindlessly through screens? Would you still worry about who likes you? Or would you finally tell someone you love them? Forgive the person who wronged you? Or simply watch the sunset in silence, grateful that you got to exist at all? The Stoics would say, do that now. Don't wait for death to remind you of life. In the quiet hours of dawn, Marcus would write letters to himself, not about glory or victory, but about humility. He knew that every crown, every title, every empire would crumble. He understood what most of us forget. The goal is not to outlive death, but to outlive regret. To the Stoic mind, death isn't an interruption. It's an instructor. It teaches urgency. It teaches clarity. It teaches peace. Think of the painting by Philippe de Champagne from 1671, the skull, the rose, and the hourglass. The rose reminds you beauty fades. The hourglass tells you time is running out. The skull shows you where you're heading. Together, they whisper the same truth: life is only meaningful because it ends. The modern world hides this truth behind busyness and noise. We plan as if we'll live forever, building schedules, chasing careers, collecting possessions, never pausing to ask for what, but beneath it all, death waits patiently, not as an enemy, but as a mirror. And when you dare to look, you see not darkness, but direction. Memento Mori doesn't want to scare you. It wants to sharpen you. It wants to burn away the nonsense until only what matters remains: love, virtue, courage, and gratitude. Because the moment you truly remember that you will die, something incredible happens. You start to live like you mean it. You start showing up for your life, not just existing in it. You stop chasing quantity and start seeking quality. You stop talking about your values and start embodying them. That's the awakening. You could leave life right now, not a warning, a liberation, because once you make peace with death, you're free to live without fear, without waste, without pretending, and that's the paradox of Stoicism. By remembering that life ends, you learn how to begin it. So take a breath, feel your pulse. That rhythm is your reminder. The countdown continues, quietly, invisibly, mercifully. You can ignore it, or you can let it shape you. The Stoic doesn't wait for death to knock. He greets it every morning, smiles, and says, "Not yet. I still have work to do." 2. The paradox of time. How the fear of death wastes life. Time is the most democratic force in existence. It doesn't care who you are, how rich you become, or how loudly the world says your name. It moves the same for everyone. Tick, tock, gone. And yet, people treat time as if it were cheap, something that can be paused, stretched, refunded, or ignored. We waste it like loose change, not realizing it's the only currency we'll never earn back. Seneca once said, "It's not that we have a short life, but that we waste much of it." Those words aren't poetic, they're surgical. He's cutting straight into the modern disease of existence. We confuse being busy with being alive. Everywhere you look, people are running, running to work, running from silence, running from reflection, but no one knows where they're going. We measure our worth by how full our calendars look, how loud our notifications sound, how constant the motion feels. But motion is not meaning. Noise is not life. We fear death, yet we behave like it's never coming. And in that denial, we commit the greatest tragedy of all: we die before we die. Look around. People spend their best years chasing approval. They spend decades proving themselves to people who don't even notice. They fear failure so much that they never attempt anything real. They fear judgment so deeply that they shrink from the very life they were meant to live. But here's the paradox. The more you fear death, the more you waste life. Because fear breeds hesitation. Hesitation kills purpose, and purpose is what gives life its worth. You've seen it. The endless cycle of "I'll start when," "I'll travel when I have more money," "I'll forgive when I'm ready," "I'll live when things calm down." But things never calm down. They just end. Marcus Aurelius warned himself against this illusion. Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. Be good, not rich, not famous, not remembered. Good, in thought, in action, in intention. It's simple, but not easy, because good requires presence, and presence requires courage. The courage to face the ticking clock without flinching. We think we're afraid of death, but what we're really afraid of is unfinished life. The project never started. The words never said. The person we could have been. Seneca called this the greatest waste, not dying too soon, but living too shallow. He wrote, "We are always complaining that our days are few, and acting as though there will be no end of them." That's why the Stoics made mortality their daily meditation. Not because they loved death, but because they loved life too much to sleepwalk through it. Picture Marcus Aurelius again, emperor of the known world. Yet every night he reminded himself he could lose it all by morning. He didn't write about luxury or politics. He wrote about character, about stillness, about keeping his soul clean while surrounded by chaos. He knew what we forget, that no amount of success can buy you one more sunrise. Now, look at us, centuries later, with more comfort than any emperor could dream of. We have endless entertainment, boundless technology, instant access to everything except meaning. We've built an entire civilization designed to distract us from death, but in doing so, we've also distracted ourselves from life. We scroll through the highlight reels of strangers while our own stories fade. We avoid silence because it reminds us of the one truth we can't escape. Our time is running out. And that's the paradox. The harder we try to forget death, the faster we waste life. The Stoic doesn't run from this truth. He stares directly into it and finds peace there. Epictetus taught, "Don't seek for things to happen as you wish. Wish for them to happen as they do, and your life will flow smoothly." That's not resignation, that's liberation. When you accept that you can't control the length of your life, you finally begin to control its depth. Depth. That's what the modern soul is starving for. We've got data, dopamine, deadlines, but no depth. We've mistaken activity for aliveness. We're constantly moving but rarely arriving. Seneca said it perfectly. People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy. If you think about that long enough, it hurts, because it's true. We guard our money, our possessions, our pride, but we hand over our time like it means nothing. We give it away to resentment, to fear, to people who drain us, to things we don't even care about. So here's a thought experiment the Stoics would ask you to try. If you knew your exact death date, not years away, but days, what would you do differently today? What would you stop tolerating? Who would you forgive? What would you create, say, or risk? Before the hourglass ran empty, because here's the secret: that date is already set. You just don't know it. So live like it's near, not in panic, but in precision. The Stoics believe that clarity comes from contact with truth. And the truth is, your time is shrinking. Right now, as you read these words. And that's not morbid, it's magnificent, because it means every second matters. Memento Mori doesn't want you to chase more time. It wants you to use the time you already have. It doesn't want you to fear the end. It wants you to start the beginning. You don't need more years. You need more moments, fully lived, fully felt, fully yours. When you realize that, the fear of death disappears, because you'll know that when it comes, you've already lived enough for 10 lifetimes. That's the paradox resolved. You conquer death not by denying it, but by honoring it with how you live. 3. The Stoic ritual practicing death to awaken life. Every philosophy becomes hollow the moment it stays on paper. The Stoics knew this. That's why they never stopped at words. They lived their philosophy through rituals, reflection, and relentless self-discipline. And at the core of their daily practice was one ritual that changed everything: Memento Mori, the remembrance of death. To them, this wasn't morbid. It was sacred, because death, when contemplated rightly, doesn't kill joy. It gives birth to it. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every morning before sunrise. He'd wake before the world, sit quietly, and remind himself, you could leave life right now, He wasn't obsessing over tragedy. He was sharpening perception, cutting through the fog of distraction so that what truly mattered could finally come into view. That single thought turned every mundane act, walking, breathing, leading, loving, into an act of reverence. This was his meditation on mortality. Not the kind you do to escape the world, but the kind that plunges you deeper into it. A Stoic didn't meditate to silence life. He meditated to see it clearly. When you live with that awareness, you stop taking people for granted. You stop postponing affection. You stop assuming you'll always have later. You love now, because later is a myth. Seneca, the philosopher of time, practiced what we'd call negative visualization. Each morning, he imagined losing everything: his wealth, his friends, his freedom. And each night, he reflected on how fortunate he'd been to still have what remained. That daily encounter with impermanence built a paradoxical strength. He feared nothing because he'd already accepted the worst. He was free precisely because he no longer demanded that life go his way. In our age, that sounds impossible. We are allergic to silence. We run from discomfort. We decorate our days with noise to drown out the truth that one day will vanish. But the Stoic faced that truth head on. He invited it to breakfast. He drank tea with it. He learned to live alongside it as an honest companion. The result? Clarity. When you remember you will die, you start to see how much of life is not worth dying for. Pride? No. Ego? No. Arguments that go nowhere? No. Comparison? Envy? Drama? Never. You start to value what endures: virtue, love, presence, gratitude. Memento Mori filters your soul. It shows you what's real and burns away what's not. Imagine doing this in your own life. You wake in the morning and whisper, "I may not see another sunrise." Then you look around. Your room, your loved ones, your work, and everything glows with quiet urgency. Your coffee tastes richer. Your problems seem smaller. You stop chasing the illusion of more and start honoring the miracle of enough. This is the Stoic ritual in modern form, a psychological recalibration. It realigns your mind with reality. Because the human brain, left unchecked, forgets what's real. It thinks time is infinite. It thinks comfort will protect you. It thinks meaning can wait. Memento Mori brings you back. It whispers, you have this moment. Nothing else is guaranteed. And that awareness, when repeated daily, changes how you walk through the world. Think about the art of the Middle Ages. The skull beside the candle, the hourglass beside the flower. Those weren't decorations. They were meditations, reminders that beauty fades, time passes, and life, though fragile, can still be luminous. The Stoics would tell you keep such symbols near. They're not for morbidity, they're for memory. They remind you that your breath, right now, is your most precious possession. If you want to practice like a Stoic, start small. Every morning, take 1 minute to remember you'll die. Not dramatically, sincerely. Then, ask, how would I live if this were my last day? Do that for a week, and you'll notice something. Your focus sharpens, your patience deepens, your priorities reorder themselves naturally. You'll speak more truth, waste less time, love more freely. Because death contemplation doesn't lead to sadness, it leads to sincerity. Seneca wrote, "He who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave." He meant that once you stop fearing death, nothing can own you. Not money, not failure, not public opinion. When you've looked death in the eye and smiled, the world can no longer manipulate you with fear. That's why this ritual isn't gloomy, it's empowering. You don't meditate on death to mourn. You meditate on death to awaken. In a world addicted to denial, that's revolutionary. Because once you're awake to death, you're also awake to life. You become more gentle with time, more grateful for moments, more courageous in your choices. You stop chasing immortality and start building meaning. Marcus Aurelius said, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." That's not just a quote, it's a commandment. He's saying, don't just exist, participate. Don't just count your days, make your days count. That's the ritual. It's not about candles or robes. It's about remembrance. It's about remembering that the line between someday and never is razor thin. So tonight, before you sleep, close your eyes and imagine your life ending. Feel the weight of that truth, not as dread, but as gratitude. Because if tomorrow comes, you'll treat it like the gift it truly is. And if it doesn't, you'll have already lived well. That's Memento Mori, in motion death as your teacher, awareness as your weapon, gratitude as your reward. It's not just a thought, it's a practice, one that turns every ordinary day into something eternal. 4. The modern crisis. When busyness becomes a distraction from death, there's a reason the modern world fears silence. Because in silence, you can hear the truth you've been avoiding. You are not immortal. And the modern mind, terrified of mortality, does what it's best at. It distracts itself to death. We have mastered the art of being busy. We fill every second with stimulation, work, notifications, podcasts, deadlines, endless scrolling. Anything to escape the awareness that every passing moment is one step closer to the end. We are the first generation to be constantly connected, and yet we've never been more disconnected from reality. The ancients stared directly at death. They walked through plague, famine, and war with open eyes, not because they were fearless, but because they accepted the deal of life. To be born is to be temporary. Life is impermanent. But we, with our glowing screens, curated lives, and algorithmic comfort, live as if death has been deleted from the system. We hide it in hospitals. We euphemize it in language. We pretend it's someone else's problem. The result, we have become a civilization of avoidance. People who measure success by how well they can stay distracted. Seneca saw it coming 2,000 years ago. He wrote, "Men do not care how nobly they live, only how long." Though it is within everyone's reach to live nobly, but within no one's reach to live long. Replace men with humans and scrolling feeds with living nobly, and you'll see, nothing has changed except the wallpaper. We've traded reflection for reaction. We don't pause, we refresh. We don't feel, we consume. We think staying busy protects us from anxiety, but in truth, it only multiplies it, because busyness is not productivity. It's panic in disguise. It's how modern people run from the inevitability they can't accept that life will end. And most of what they're chasing won't matter when it does. You can see it in every corner of modern life. We glorify the grind. We worship the hustle. We treat exhaustion like a status symbol, as if burning ourselves out somehow proves we're alive. But the Stoics would call that insanity. Marcus Aurelius would look at our endless commotion and ask, "Is this what you were made for, to rush about? To be anxious? To crave things you can't control?" He wrote those words while commanding the Roman army during a plague. And still, he found time to reflect, to write, to breathe. He led an empire and still had the presence to remind himself that no title, no victory, no power could save him from the laws of nature. Meanwhile, we panic if Wi-Fi drops for 5 seconds. We act as if being unreachable for a day is an act of rebellion. We fill our schedules so tightly there's no room for thought, no space for philosophy, no breath between one task and the next. We've mistaken movement for meaning, and then wonder why. Despite all our motion, we still feel lost. Epictetus warned about this exact trap. No man is free who is not master of himself. But how can you master yourself if you're never alone with yourself? We avoid solitude because solitude confronts us with questions busyness cannot answer. What am I doing with my time? Who am I becoming? What am I avoiding? And behind those questions, the deeper one waits. How much time do I have left? That's the one we can't face. So we bury it under meetings, entertainment, ambition. We tell ourselves we're too busy to think about death, when in truth, we're busy because we can't stop thinking about it. We've become addicted to distraction as a defense mechanism. We mistake the numbing buzz of activity for the pulse of purpose. But purpose requires stillness, and stillness requires courage. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short life, but that we waste much of it." He would see our world today, people with 1,000 tools for convenience, and no time for reflection, and call it what it is: self-imposed slavery. Because every minute spent avoiding truth is a minute surrendered to fear. The Stoics practiced the opposite. They slowed down. They simplified. They practiced contemplative friction, deliberately stopping in the middle of chaos to ask, "Am I living well right now?" They didn't wait for silence to find them. They created it. Marcus would retreat to his tent at night, emperor, warrior, philosopher, and write not to his subjects, but to himself. He didn't tweet his wisdom. He whispered it into the pages of his own mind. He was busy, but he wasn't distracted. There's a difference. Busyness drains you. Discipline sustains you. The first is chaos without direction. The second is order with purpose. When you remember Memento Mori, you begin to see through the illusion of endless motion. You realize that time isn't something to fill, it's something to feel. Every pause becomes sacred. Every quiet moment becomes a reminder this is what being alive sounds like. If you ever want to understand how far we've drifted, go for a walk without your phone. Notice how restless you become after 5 minutes. Notice the itch to check, to scroll, to catch up. That's not boredom, that's withdrawal. You're detoxing from distraction, but if you stay in that silence long enough, something changes. You start to hear your thoughts again. You start to notice the wind, the weight of your steps, the rhythm of your breath. And in that moment, death is no longer a distant idea. It's the pulse inside your chest. You realize that what you were running from was never death itself. It was life, unfiltered and unbuffered. That's the crisis of our time. We're so afraid of death that we've forgotten how to live. But Memento Mori invites us to stop running, to turn off the noise, to face the truth directly. Because when you face it, really face it, the fear dissolves. All that remains is gratitude, clarity, and quiet strength. The modern Stoic isn't someone who escapes the world. He's someone who moves through it awake. He uses technology but doesn't let it use him. He works hard, but never at the expense of awareness. He remembers that no calendar invite is more urgent than mortality. And when others run from silence, he walks toward it. Because in that silence, he finds what busyness can never offer: peace. That's how Memento Mori becomes the antidote to modern madness. It's the medicine for overstimulation, the cure for burnout, the answer to the question we keep dodging: you will die, and that's why you must live. 5. The transformation. Turning death into discipline. There's a quiet kind of power that comes from remembering you're running out of time. It doesn't make you panic, it makes you precise. It burns away hesitation and replaces it with purpose. Because once you know life is slipping through your fingers, you stop asking for more time and start asking for more meaning. That's the real transformation behind Memento Mori. It's not about fearing the end. It's about using the end as your compass. The Stoics didn't think about death to be morbid. They thought about it to be moral. They understood something we keep forgetting in our endless chase for comfort: that urgency is sacred. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." He didn't just write philosophy. He weaponized it against procrastination, because that's the disease of the human spirit, not mortality, but postponement. We tell ourselves we'll start tomorrow. We'll change when it's easier. We'll forgive when it feels right. But death doesn't negotiate. It doesn't reschedule. It arrives unannounced, and it doesn't care how many plans you had. So the Stoic answer is simple: don't wait to be ready. Be alive now. Seneca once said, "Let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing." He wrote that after watching his friends die suddenly during Nero's reign, brilliant men who thought they had decades left, he saw their unfinished manuscripts, their half-lived dreams, and realized that the saddest thing about death isn't that it comes, it's that it catches us unprepared to live. That realization hardened him. He started treating every morning as a new life, every night as a farewell. That wasn't dramatics, that was discipline. He stopped wasting time on empty conversation, gossip, and ego battles. He funneled every drop of energy into learning, writing, reflecting, and preparing for the day when time would stop calling his name. Memento Mori became his daily audit. If this were my last sunrise, how would I spend it? And that question, if asked honestly, is one of the most powerful tools of self-mastery you'll ever use. Because if you live like you're dying, you stop negotiating with your potential. You stop waiting for motivation. You stop letting fear choose for you. You begin to understand that life rewards urgency, not the panicked kind, but the disciplined kind. The kind that knows time is precious and refuses to waste it on distraction. Marcus Aurelius trained himself this way. Every morning he wrote about death, not to sadden himself, but to remind himself that there was no later. You could leave life right now, he said. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Those weren't just words. They were a commandment. Every decision he made, from leading an army to comforting a citizen, was filtered through that lens. Would I still do this if I were dying tomorrow? That one thought transformed him from emperor to philosopher king. Imagine living that way. Every argument, every task, every hesitation, all weighed against the scale of mortality. You'd stop saying, "I'll do it eventually." You'd start saying, "I'll do it while I can." You'd stop being reckless with your time, because you'd know it's not endless. Memento Mori is the most powerful productivity system ever invented, not for your career, but for your character. It gives you the clarity to stop chasing what doesn't matter and the discipline to give everything you have to what does. Epictetus told his students that philosophy wasn't theory, it was training for life. Don't explain your philosophy, he said. Embody it. And the way you embody philosophy is by remembering that you will die. If you truly believed you could be gone by sunset, how would you treat people today? Would you still gossip? Would you still complain? Would you still compare yourself to strangers? Or would you finally drop the weight of ego and show up as your truest self? Humble, honest, awake. That's what Memento Mori demands. Alignment. It doesn't ask you to live recklessly. It asks you to live righteously, to stop chasing comfort and start chasing character, to act as if every moment matters. Because it does. This awareness isn't supposed to make you somber. It's supposed to make you sharp. Every time you delay something important, a dream, a conversation, a purpose, remember this: you're not saving time. You're spending it. There's no later account you can withdraw from. Every hour you waste is an hour that no longer exists anywhere in the universe. Seneca said, "While we delay, life speeds by. You don't feel it day to day, but you'll feel it when it's too late." That's why the Stoics built daily reflection into their discipline. At night, they reviewed their choices. Did I live by my principles? Did I waste this day on pettiness or purpose? If I died tonight, would I die satisfied that ritual kept them honest? It stripped away illusion and left only essence. Modern psychology calls this mortality salience, the awareness of death that sharpens decision-making. Studies show it actually increases gratitude, reduces greed, and motivates ethical behavior. The Stoics didn't need a lab to prove it. They lived it. When you embrace death as your teacher, you start to treat life like a mission, not a hobby. You wake up knowing every minute counts. You work not for fame, but for excellence. You forgive quickly. You let go easily. You act, not because you're afraid to die, but because you're finally ready to live. And something strange happens. Discipline stops feeling like duty. It starts feeling like devotion. You're no longer forcing yourself to work, to improve, to create. You want to, because you understand that time is the rarest form of wealth. Every moment of focus becomes an act of gratitude. Every moment of patience becomes an act of power. Every moment of love becomes an act of courage. This is the Stoic transformation, turning awareness of death into the fire that fuels your life. Marcus said, "Think of yourself as dead. You have lived your life. Now take what's left and live it properly." That's not metaphor. That's instruction. Die to your excuses. Die to your fears. Die to everything that keeps you from living with intention. Because once you do, once you bury who you were, you'll finally meet who you were meant to be. Memento Mori isn't about the end. It's about the beginning that follows when you finally realize the end is real. That's where all discipline begins, not in control, but in clarity. When you stop pretending you have time, you start using the time you have like a warrior, precise, focused, unstoppable. That's how you turn death into discipline. You let every sunrise remind you the clock is ticking, and instead of fearing it, you smile, because you finally know what to do with it. 6. The acceptance when you stop running from fate. There's a moment in every Stoic's journey when the awareness of death stops being heavy and starts feeling holy. That moment is called acceptance. It's when Memento Mori ceases to be a warning and becomes a form of worship. Up until this point, you've learned to see death, to face it, to use it as fuel. But now, something deeper happens. You stop resisting it altogether. And that is where the Stoic finds true peace. This is the heart of Amor Fati, the love of fate. It's the final evolution of Memento Mori. You begin by remembering you will die. Then, you start acting as if life is precious. Finally, you arrive here, at the understanding that every single thing that happens, even loss, even pain, even death itself, is exactly as it should be. That's the moment when remembrance becomes reverence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Accept whatever comes to you woven in the pattern of your destiny, for what could more aptly fit your needs?" He wasn't being poetic. He was describing survival. He had watched plague sweep through Rome, seen armies betray him, buried 8 of his children, and still, he wrote those words, calmly, almost lovingly. He understood something most people never will, that to fight reality is to die twice. Once in the event, and again in your resistance to it. The Stoics called it the discipline of assent, the practice of saying yes to whatever happens, not a passive yes, not a weak surrender, but a conscious affirmation. This, too, belongs. Because once you say yes to fate, you stop being a victim of it. Epictetus lived this truth harder than anyone. Born a slave, beaten so badly that he walked with a limp for the rest of his life. He could have cursed existence, but instead, he smiled at it. He said, "Don't seek for things to happen as you wish, but wish for things to happen as they do, and your life will flow smoothly." That's not fatalism, that's freedom. Because when you stop wishing life would go your way, you discover something astonishing. It already is. The storms that test you are the same forces that shape you. The obstacles you hate are the same ones that prepare you. The losses you mourn are the very reasons you learn to love deeply. When you love fate, nothing that happens to you can destroy you, because you've already welcomed it in. Seneca called this cheerful acceptance. He said, "A wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not." Notice the word content, not defeated, not apathetic. Content. There's a strange strength in that word. A quiet rebellion against the modern condition, because we live in a world built on complaint. We want better weather, faster Wi-Fi, more comfort, fewer problems. We think peace comes from controlling circumstances. The Stoics knew peace only comes from controlling ourselves. They didn't deny pain. They simply refused to give it more power than it deserved. They didn't pray for easier lives. They prayed for stronger souls. That's Amor Fati. It's saying to the universe, whatever you bring, I will use. To the untrained mind, that sounds impossible. How do you love the loss of a loved one? How do you love failure, illness, heartbreak? The Stoic answer: you don't love the event itself. You love the wisdom it gives you. You love the strength it forces you to discover. You love the chance to demonstrate virtue in the face of adversity. Marcus said it best: a blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. That's Amor Fati. You don't just endure the fire. You become it. You take whatever life throws at you, loss, failure, betrayal, and turn it into light. That's what it means to stop running from fate. You stop asking, why me? And start saying, because me. Because I'm the one strong enough to handle this. Because I'm the one meant to learn from this. Because this, too, is part of my story. It's a profound shift from resistance to reverence, from victimhood to vision. You no longer see events as random. You see them as choreography. Every step designed to teach you something essential about yourself. You stop comparing your path to others because you realize everyone's fate is custom-built. Yours might involve heartbreak. Someone else's might involve loneliness, failure, or loss. But the question isn't, why did this happen? The question is, what is this here to teach me? Once you start asking that, everything changes. Pain becomes a teacher. Delay becomes preparation. Even death becomes an invitation to live more truthfully, love more deeply, and cling less to what fades. That's what it means to make peace with fate. Not to love suffering, but to love what suffering reveals. Friedrich Nietzsche, who admired the Stoics, later put it in one unforgettable line: my formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati. That one wants nothing to be different. Not forward, not backward, not for all eternity. Not merely to bear what is necessary, but to love it. To love it. That's the part that transforms everything, because acceptance without love is resignation. But acceptance with love, that's transcendence. When you can look at your life, the good, the bad, the losses, the disappointments, and whisper, yes, you become untouchable. Not because life stops hurting, but because you've stopped running from it. That's the quiet secret of the Stoic sage. They don't control everything. They just stop being controlled by anything. Modern psychology now echoes what the Stoics already knew. Acceptance is not weakness. It's the foundation of resilience. The more you resist reality, the more you suffer. The more you align with it, the more peace you feel, even in chaos. Memento Mori opens your eyes. Carpe diem moves your hands. Amor Fati opens your heart. Together, they turn a fearful existence into a fearless one. So when fate changes your plans, thank it. When you lose something, bless it. When you suffer, learn from it. When you fail, start again, wiser. That's what the Stoic means when he says, I love my fate. He's not celebrating pain, he's celebrating participation. He's saying, whatever the universe gives me, I will turn it into growth. And that's the moment when you stop running from death, from loss, from life itself. You stop negotiating with reality and start partnering with it. You stop asking life to be easy and start asking yourself to be excellent. And when you do, every event, every ending, every heartbreak becomes something sacred, because you'll know it couldn't have happened any other way. 7. The eternal reminder. How remembering death makes you immortal. There comes a moment, after you've faced death, studied it, accepted it, and learned to love it, when you finally understand death was never your enemy. Forgetting it was. Memento Mori is not a call to despair. It's a call to awaken. It's the gentle whisper of truth that says you are temporary, so make it count. We spend most of our lives trying to escape that fact, building legacies, chasing fame, stacking wealth, desperate to carve our names into stone so that time will remember us. But even stone erodes, even stars burn out. And that's the point. Immortality was never about being remembered by others. It was about remembering yourself while you're still here. Because when you truly remember that you will die, something paradoxical happens. You stop being afraid of time running out, and you start becoming time itself. Every second you live with awareness stretches into infinity. Every small act, every kindness, every breath, every moment of presence becomes eternal. That's the secret the Stoics guarded, and it's the one modern life keeps forgetting. Marcus Aurelius said, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good, not be successful, not be remembered, be good." Goodness, that's the only immortality within your control. Because every act of goodness ripples beyond your life. Every small act of integrity becomes an echo that time cannot silence. That's how the Stoics achieved eternity, not through monuments or titles, but through character. Seneca called virtue the one thing that outlives the body. He wrote, "He who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave." And that's what immortality means. Freedom. Freedom from fear. Freedom from pettiness. Freedom from the illusion that tomorrow is guaranteed. In this way, Memento Mori isn't about ending life. It's about expanding it. Because when you live with the constant awareness of death, you stop shrinking from existence. You stop waiting for permission. You stop being half alive. You start living with a fierce tenderness, the kind that looks at a sunset and doesn't wish for another, because this one is enough. The kind that holds a friend's laughter like gold, because you know it's finite. The kind that looks at a stranger and recognizes a shared fragility, the simple truth that all of us are walking each other home. When you see life through the eyes of Memento Mori, every day becomes sacred. The mundane becomes miraculous. The ordinary becomes holy. Think of your heartbeat. Right now, it's keeping you alive, steady, rhythmic, tireless. One day, it will stop. But for now, it's here. And every beat is a drum calling you to presence. You can ignore it, or you can dance to it. That's what the Stoics meant when they said to live in accordance with nature. Nature doesn't cling. It doesn't beg. It simply becomes again and again. Seasons end. Flowers wither. Rivers dry. And yet, nothing is lost, only transformed. You are not separate from that cycle. You are that cycle. The awareness of death doesn't diminish you. It returns you to nature's rhythm. It teaches you to breathe, to release, to renew. You stop fighting time and start flowing with it. And that flow, that harmony between life and death, is what the Stoics called peace. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Everything is ephemeral, both that which remembers and that which is remembered." It sounds sad until you realize what he's saying. If everything passes, then the only thing that matters is how fully you live while it's here. That's the key to immortality: presence. When you live with full attention, even a single day can outweigh a lifetime of distraction. Because immortality isn't measured in years, it's measured in awareness. The modern mind fears being forgotten. The Stoic mind fears never having lived consciously at all. Seneca once wrote that we die only once, but fear it 1,000 times. And yet, every time we forget to be present, every time we waste our hours on resentment or fear, we perform a small rehearsal for death, a living death. Memento Mori ends that rehearsal. It wakes you up. It reminds you that being alive is not something that happens to you. It's something you do. And that's where immortality begins, not in escaping death, but in participating fully in life. You become immortal in every moment you refuse to drift. You become immortal every time you choose courage over comfort, truth over vanity, love over fear. Those choices are what survive you, not the things you owned, not the followers you gained, not the awards you collected. Your immortality is the impact of your presence, the invisible trail of goodness you leave behind. Because death can stop your heart, but it cannot erase your influence. It cannot touch the lives you've lifted, the people you've forgiven, the wisdom you've passed on. It cannot silence the echo of your actions in the hearts of others. That's why the Stoic doesn't seek to live forever. He seeks to live so deeply that even death feels complete. And maybe that's the final lesson Memento Mori wants you to learn. You don't conquer death by running from it. You conquer it by meeting it with gratitude. By living so fully, so honestly, so courageously that when it comes, you can look it in the eye and say, "You're right on time." Because when you've lived each day as if it were borrowed, when you've loved without restraint, when you've done your duty without delay, you realize that death can't take anything from you, because you've already given everything. Marcus Aurelius called this the art of dying well, which is really just the art of living well. He wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." That's what Memento Mori means. Not a countdown, but a compass. Not a sentence, but a summons. A call to live with awareness, courage, and love. So the next time you feel fear rise in your chest, remember it's not death you fear. It's the thought of unlived moments. Don't let them slip away. Don't waste the only life you've been given wishing for another. Breathe, act, forgive, love. Because in the end, that's the only immortality there is. Not being remembered by the world, but remembering to be alive while you still can. And when your final hour comes, when the light fades, the noise quiets, and the last breath escapes, you'll smile. Because you'll know you didn't run from death. You danced with it. You turned it into your greatest teacher, your greatest companion, your greatest liberation. That's the Stoic way. That's Memento Mori, the art of remembering you will die, and therefore, finally learning how to live. Take a breath. Not a rushed one, a real one. The kind that reminds you you're still here. You've just spent the last hour walking beside death, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, you can feel how alive you are. The heartbeat you barely notice, the air in your lungs, the quiet rhythm of existence, all of it happening right now as a miracle disguised as routine. That's the secret Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus wanted us to remember. Life is fragile, but that's what makes it beautiful. Everything you love, the people, the sunsets, the small ordinary moments, they shine brighter because they don't last forever. And that's not something to mourn. That's something to celebrate. You don't have to chase forever. You just have to be here, fully, honestly, courageously, in this moment. That's what Memento Mori truly means. Not a fixation on death, but a reverence for life. Not fear, but focus. Not despair, but direction. So tonight, when you set your phone down and the world grows quiet, try this. Close your eyes. Place a hand on your chest. Feel that steady rhythm inside you. That is time, gently passing through you. Whisper to yourself, I am alive. I am aware. I will not waste this. That's your daily vow, your contract with existence. To wake with gratitude, to live with urgency, to love without hesitation, and when your time comes, to leave without regret, because the goal of Memento Mori was never to make you morbid. It was to make you magnificent. Marcus once wrote, when you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. That's your invitation, not tomorrow. Now, so take one more deep breath. Let gratitude fill your lungs. And remember, you don't need more time. You just need to use the time you already have. Beautifully. Here. If this message spoke to you, stay a little longer. Reflect. Subscribe only if it feels right. Not out of habit, but intention. This is Stoic wisdom, and this is how we remember to live. Good night, sweet dreams.